Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 291. We're talking about our NFL quarterback power rankings this week. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to get my hands dirty talking some QBs. I know we're going to have some disagreements. I have your list. You do not have mine. So you're going in completely blind as to what I think. But I think generally we're gonna think a lot of the same things about the top guys, and then in the middle we'll have some debates. Should be fun overall, though. There's nothing better than talking about quarterbacks.
Nice. You blindsided me there because I've absolutely no idea if we're going to have differences or not. Like, for all I knew, we would have the same 32, which is unlikely, but I guess could be possible. But so, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to debating them. So two things before we begin. First, please hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or send this link out to someone. Like the video, like all that would mean a lot to us. Second, we have a couple pieces of news to discuss. Two major players have opted out. CJ Mosley, linebacker for the Jets. Jawan James, tackle for the Broncos. So how do you think these opt-outs affect their teams, and which one is more impactful?
I think the one that's more impactful is going to be the opt-out of Jawan James, because the Broncos were already weak at tackle. They didn't have anything good on the left side of the line. Garrett Bowles is a penalty machine, hasn't done anything there. So that was supposed to be their one weakness, and James is a rock-solid tackle. But now he's going to be off the field for another year. He missed last season, and the team just doesn't have any depth at the position. Like, I'm looking at their depth chart now, and I don't really recognize any of the names. The only one I do recognize is Elijah Wilkinson, who's a backup guard, and I only recognize him because he was at UMass when I was at UMass, and we don't have many Minutemen in the NFL right now. So, yeah, I think the Broncos are going to need to add some tackle help there. I think for the Jets, CJ Mosley opting out is disappointing, but their defense was already going to be much worse after they traded Jamal Adams. So now they're losing their best linebacker. I think what we can assume is their back seven is not going to be very good this year. Their defense is just going to kind of be middle of the pack at best if all their players play up to their potential. And I think the team's going to quit on Adam Gase anyway at some point. So I don't think Mosley's opt-out is that big of a deal. There is one more opt-out that I did forget about when you asked me before we started. Is there anything that's happened in the last 2 hours? I believe Marcus Gilbert has opted out. Let me double-check on that. The Cardinals tackle. And yes, he is planning on opting out. So that's going to hurt them. I know they just signed Kelvin Beachum, though, so I feel like they have a good replacement. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, as well as Jawan James and our good friend CJ Mosley.
Yeah, I looked at the news. I tried to find some stuff before we started recording. I didn't see that, so thanks for pointing that out. The Beachum signing was huge, and it was an insurance policy for Marcus Gilbert. And little did we know that they'd need it before the start of the season. So I think they're okay at tackle right now. They have Beachum, they have DJ Humphries on the left side, and then they have Josh Jones. They drafted in the third round. So as long as everyone stays healthy right now, I think they're going to be okay. The problem's going to be if Humphries gets hurt like he usually does, if Beachum gets hurt like he usually does, they're going to have to start Josh Jones and some other guy at tackle, which is going to be a disaster. But this does hurt at Arizona, but they're not alone. I mean, people are dropping out of the league, usually like mostly offensive linemen. So Jawan James's dropout or opt-out is not that surprising, but it is pretty painful for the Broncos. They had a lot of hype heading into this year with their improved receivers, Drew Locke in his second year. They signed Melvin Gordon. You have Noah Fant gaining experience. Like there's a lot of hype with this team, but suddenly they're down. They're one of their better tackles who, he didn't really play much last year. So you have to wonder if the Broncos regret signing him. So yeah, it is going to be pretty brutal for the Broncos. I still think they can maybe get to the playoffs because of their defense, but it's going to be tougher now. As for the Jets, I think this only helps them because they're building for the future. They traded away Jamal Adams, and now they're going to get a better draft pick. Maybe they get Jamar Chase in the 2021 NFL draft. So I think that could be nice for them. And I think this is another lemon. Like CJ Mosley played 1.5 games last year. And now he's going to miss all this year. Like, is he ever really going to play for them? Like, they don't know. I feel like the Jets have to start looking for a new linebacker, but they have a ton of draft picks, so they can make it happen. All right, so Jordan Reed was signed by the 49ers. Kind of a surprising move. I mean, you covered him. He played for the Redskins for a while. So what do you think about this signing?
Yeah, I think this is a great signing for the 49ers. They got him on a cheap one-year deal, so there's no risk from their standpoint of, if he doesn't stay healthy, that they're not going to lose much. I think the bigger risk is on Reed's part because he's had 7 or 8 concussions in his career. And, at this point, you just hope that he can stay healthy and avoid those big hits. And, he, by all accounts, he's a good guy. He's super talented when he's been healthy. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field in recent seasons. I think as a number 2 option behind George Kittle, I think he could really find almost like a Vernon Davis type resurgence. Davis left the 49ers, joined the Broncos, and, wasn't very good. Then he came to Washington, became their number 2 tight end, and was really good because he was mostly just asked to work as a secondary receiver to complement Reed. I think Reed will do that for Kittle. And I think that just gives them another really good matchup weapon on offense. They were kind of lacking that with the uncertainty about Deebo Samuel's health. I think he might be ready to start the season, but if he's not, this just gives them another weapon. So I think that was a very smart signing. And he's already familiar with Kyle Shanahan because he coached Reed as a rookie in Washington. So I think this is just an A-grade move by John Lynch and company. And it makes me feel a little more confident about the 49ers, who I was kind of a little bit skeptical of this season because I think they're going to have a Super Bowl hangover. But moves like this to upgrade depth at this point in the offseason are always good moves.
Yeah, there's no downside here. You can argue if there's upside because Jordan Reed's been injured so much. It's probably likely that he's going to miss a ton of games. He may not even play, which is unfortunate because he's so talented. But on the off chance that he can avoid injury and not get concussed anymore, this could really work out for the 49ers if they have another intermediate weapon for Jimmy Garoppolo. George Kittle is a phenomenal player. You can argue he's the best tight end in the NFL. But what if he goes down? What if he misses all this year? They need an insurance option. And now they have one who has experience, as you said, in Kyle Shanahan's offense. So I like the move. And, like I said, no downside and all upside, although probably won't see the upside. I agree. It's an A move. So let's get to the NFL quarterback power rankings. So how we're going to do this is we're going to break it up into 8 segments. So we're going to go 32 through 29, each of us, and then we're going to discuss and then keep going forward with that. So why don't you go first because it'll be easier for me to type this into the banner, which I'm going to try to do without messing up, and I probably will. So who are your 32 through 29?
Okay, so coming in at 32, I have both Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert listed. So basically the Chargers starter comes in at the bottom. I think Taylor's the lowest end of the veteran starting quarterbacks in the league. He can be accurate, but just short. He's not accurate downfield, but he's accurate in the short to intermediate game. So he can be a game manager, so that's fine, but nothing special. 31's Gardner Minshew, 30's Dwayne Haskins, and 29 is Derek Carr. So those are my 4 at this juncture. Do you want me to break down why I have them and then you give yours, or do you want to give yours next and then we debate?
I'll give mine and then we can debate, I think. So I have 32 Dwayne Haskins, 31 Justin Herbert. So I went with Herbert over Taylor, but I can understand Taylor. I think Taylor's going to start week 1. So, but I think Herbert by week 5 or 6. 30 is Tua Tagovailoa, only because I don't know if he's going to play this year. And then 29 is Minshew. So we have 3 agreements here. You have Haskins 2 spots above. Derek Carr is the one who really stands out to me. So what do you want to talk about why you have Carr so low?
Yeah, I just think, we've seen Carr at his ceiling be good. I mean, he was once an MVP candidate, but at this point in his career, I just feel like he plateaued and even regressed at a certain point. He's a super accurate quarterback and he can get the job done as a game manager, but I don't see him as anything more than that. I think the Raiders offense has a lot of deep threats in it, which goes counter to what I view Derek Carr as a starter. He's better underneath, but Henry Ruggs and Tyrell Williams are more downfield playmakers. Granted, Ruggs is a great route runner too, so he can get open, but I just don't think he's going to find success in this Vegas offense. I think he might get unseated by Marcus Mariota as a result. I know Mariota has some downfield throwing concerns as well, but I think with the tenuous grasp that Carr has on the starting job there, at least in my opinion, that makes him worthy of 29. But you could convince me to go a little bit higher on him, but I tend to how I do rankings is the lower ones are usually veterans who kind of, I know what they are. I don't think they're going to progress much. So I rank them lower. And that's how I feel about Derek Carr at this point.
That's just interesting strategy. So a lot of the quarterbacks, like, with Tua, I didn't put him higher because A, he may not play, and B, we don't know what we're going to get with him. Although I like him as a prospect, I think he's going to be great eventually, or he's a good chance to be great. But like I said, this is for 2020. So if he plays 2 games, like how high should he be ranked? Like that's what I was thinking with Tua. Like that's the one guy I didn't have. I see your point with Derek Carr, though. I mean, he could easily be in my bottom 4. I can't really argue against it. I spoke to one coach who used to coach him, and he said Derek Carr plays scared. And when I heard that, this is a few years ago, I heard this. When I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, like this guy's not going to be very good. And I keep saying on the site that the Raiders have to upgrade quarterback, and maybe they will with Mariota. I think by this time next year, if we're talking about Mariota in our rankings as Brooklyn's, the Vegas' starting quarterback, I think I would not be surprised by that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. And, I want to say, like, I don't think Derek Carr is like the worst quarterback ever. I think like you can get by with him as a starter, but I just don't think like the Oakland system suits him. That's my biggest knock on him right now. But like, if they change things around him, or, if he went somewhere else, maybe things would be a little bit different and I'd have a higher viewpoint of him. But for now, 29, I think is where I'll keep him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything with my bottom 4? I mean, I had Haskins 32.
I'm like contractually obligated by myself to rank Haskins slightly higher because Redskins fans will crucify me if I don't. What I'll say about Haskins is that, those 2 games at the end of the season, he really showed what he can be, and I'm expecting growth from him. Now, I'm not going to go crazy and put him in like at the 16th spot yet. I think that's like where he might be able to finish the season as, depending on how he progresses. We'll see what happens. But not putting him at 32 is basically me saying like, hey, we saw growth from him. They said he wasn't ready to start the season. He got thrown into action because of a lame duck coaching staff. So, but I have no issues with you putting him at 32. Like he was awful for a majority of last season. It was just those last 2 games that showed a lot of promise.
He was so awful that what's his face? Jeff Driscoll was favored by 4 on the road. That's how bad he was. All right, let's get to 28 through 25.
Okay, so 28 through 25. I have Ryan Tannehill coming in at 28, despite how well he played for me in fantasy last year. Then this is where it gets interesting. I have Joe Burrow at 27, which I think we're going to have to talk about, followed by Tua Tagovailoa at 26, which I'm sure will get a lot of reaction from people. And then Nick Foles comes in at 25 for me.
Okay. So let me read mine off. So at 28, I have Drew Locke, 27, Sam Darnold, 26, Ryan Tannehill, and 25, Derek Carr. So we don't have to talk about Carr. He could easily be lower than these guys. Actually, probably should be now that I'm thinking about it. So I kind of laughed when he said Tannehill. I have him in this range too, because he's what, like 56th in the NFL's top 100 list when I saw that, and like we both have him in the bottom 8 of starting quarterbacks. I don't understand. So do you want to touch on Tannehill, because I'm sure people who have looked at that list there might be like 10% of people who might agree with it. Do you want to discuss why you don't like Tannehill? And I probably agree with what you say.
Yeah, so Tannehill, last year he was a revelation for the Titans. No one expected him to outplay Marcus Mariota and take the starting job, and he did really well in the regular season. But in the postseason against really good teams, the Titans just ran the ball the whole time, and Tannehill wasn't asked to do much. You could say oh yeah, Tannehill got to the championship game, and it's like, did he really? He threw for 100 yards in a couple of those games, and he had some timely throws, but I feel like his game's mostly based off of being a game manager of a run-heavy offense. Again, against weaker defenses, I think he could get the job done. And for fantasy purposes last year, he was great, but I just don't think, one, that he's proven long-term, and 2, I don't think he's worth the contract that he got. And 3, I think he's being overcredited for what the Titans did last year. I think it was the offensive line, Derrick Henry, and the defense that carried the Titans. I don't think it was Ryan Tannehill. If you plug in another quarterback there, plug in Derek Carr into that offense, and I think they get roughly where they were last year. Maybe they go one game less far, but I just think that Tannehill is a solid guy, but he's nothing special in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, remember how he played in Miami. That's all I have to say about that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, they lean heavily on Derrick Henry. I want to see how the Titans do this year when Henry is going to wear down, because he had like 400 touches last year. And also the Titans lost Jack Conklin. So the protection is not going to be as good. So I think Tannehill is going to struggle. Wouldn't surprise me if he loses his job this year at some point. Who'd you have at 25? Because as I said, I was going to screw this up. And I remember Tannehill, Burrow, and Tua. So who's 25?
I had Nick Foles at 25.
Kenny would be very angry about that. So I think that's okay. Foles was terrible in limited action last year. Granted, he was with a miserable supporting cast. So I can understand why you have Foles there. Do you want to talk about Foles for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm a fan of Nick Foles. Like, I've loved him since he came into the league. I thought he was going to be a really good quarterback. And I think he's going to win the job in Chicago. It's not that hard to beat Mitch Trubisky, but I think you've seen Foles' track record has been mostly struggling, except a couple of really hot stretches. One when he was with the Eagles under Chip Kelly, and he had the 27-2 touchdown interception ratio. And one was when he led the team to the Super Bowl and won against Brady and the Patriots, and one of the greatest performances all time for a quarterback in the Super Bowl. So I think that Nick Foles is a solid quarterback, but he has to be in the right situation. I don't think Chicago's good for him. And we've seen it. He's just struggled outside of Philadelphia. He didn't play well in Jacksonville last year. He was good in the first game. Then he broke his collarbone. And, maybe that impacted him a good deal. But I just don't think that he's a top 20 quarterback at this point in time. If he regains that Philadelphia form, then I'm all for putting him up there. But for now, I think he's kind of a bottom 8 type guy. And unless Chicago can really unlock some more of the potential that's in him, I think it's going to be a problem for him, and I don't know how long he's going to last as the starter there.
Well, given that Trubisky kind of regressed, and he never developed, I don't really have much faith in the Bears developing Foles. I see what you're saying, but I always remember that Super Bowl run, and he was terrific. And then the next year against the Saints in the playoffs, he looked like he was going to beat the Saints, a great team. And then Alshon Jeffrey dropped the pass on the final drive. So we've seen some amazing moments from Foles, some absolutely terrific moments. We've also seen him play absolutely terribly too. So I could see him being all over the place this year if the Bears had a good offensive line, but the Bears have a terrible offensive line. So I don't have much faith in him at all. I will touch on the two guys I didn't have, or you didn't have. Drew Locke. I was never a big fan of his entering the NFL. He had some very good performances last year, especially against the Texans. Although the Texans were coming off a big upset against the Patriots, so I thought they were going to be flat. But then he had some pretty poor showings, against the Broncos at the end of the year, and also against the Chiefs. So we've seen some bad from Drew Locke. I think he could be decent one day. I just don't know if that's going to be this year. Especially with Juwan James, being or opting out. With Darnold, I think this is kind of a bias here, and I could definitely admit that I'm wrong about Darnold being 27, but he cost me a lot of money last year. I had the Jets over 7.5 wins, and they finished 7-9. Darnold missed 4 games with mono, so I feel like if he didn't have mono, I think the Jets would have gone over the win total. I also had Darnold at 100-1 to win the MVP, and I had the Jets at 100-1 to win the Super Bowl. So I feel like when's the last time a quarterback has gotten mono in the NFL? It just seems like I don't know how focused he is on football. That really bothers me. It's just really concerning that he was able to get mono, and you hear about his party lifestyle. I just don't know how focused he is. Then again, he is super young. He could mature and get better. And I think he's very talented. Outside of the rookies, I think he's the most talented group in my bottom 8.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he's got talent, which is why he's not in my bottom 8. I think he's just slowly developing. I think he's developing a lot slower than people thought he was going to. And I think we saw that in college too, because his last year, he kind of, he had a lot of turnovers and interceptions and didn't quite look poised in the pocket. So I just think I think this third year is going to be huge for him. I think he's going to make a leap, but keeping him in the bottom 8 for now, I have no qualms with that because he's really not proven yet. I mean, he's shown flashes, but nothing consistent.
Okay, let's go to 24 through 21.
Okay, 24. I have Drew Locke, then Sam Darnold at 23. So you and I were pretty close there. 22, I have Teddy Bridgewater, and 21, I have Jared Goff. So, yeah, those are my 4 there. And if I could just touch on why I had Burrow below Tua Tagovailoa, this is inherent bias on my part. I liked Tua better as a prospect than Burrow. I think both are going to be fantastic. But if Tua hadn't gotten hurt, I might have taken him number 1 over Burrow. So I will continue to rank him slightly ahead of him just for the future until we see what happens. But generally, I almost always rank first-year starters back-to-back unless different situations dictate that I do something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see the argument there. I think you're right that Tua, it's tough to say. Like, it would have been very close. I wish we had kind of like a time machine and like to kind of save Tua from getting injured so we could see what would happen in the draft to like who would be first. It's a close call. I mean, Burrow's season was amazing, and he looked like Drew Brees with mobility, and I think that's the upside he has. So I don't know. It's a tough call. I could see it either way. So I have my 24 through 21 is 24 Nick Foles and 23 Jared Goff. So we're close there. And then I have 22 Kirk Cousins and 21 Jimmy Garoppolo. So Cousins, Garoppolo, you did not have in your 24 to 21. So you think they're top 20 quarterbacks. I could definitely see the argument with Cousins. Like he posts like great numbers all the time. And the stigma with him is that he like tends to lose in the clutch, but he kind of came through last year. Like he beat the Saints in the playoffs. He had a big win against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, which people made a big deal of. I actually didn't think that was a big deal because I didn't think the Cowboys are that good. But I mean, the win against the Saints in the playoffs in New Orleans was a big deal. And then he kind of laid an egg the next week. And I think people kind of forgot about that. But I don't like Cousins. I think he makes some very boneheaded decisions sometimes. I don't trust him. I think he's very mediocre. But you covered him, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts about him.
Yeah, so you absolutely hit the nail on the head. He makes some boneheaded plays. He loses in the clutch sometimes. I think like you said, he's shown better in the clutch lately with that win in New Orleans. I have him slightly higher just because he's prone to something that I like to call the Flacco Dalton trait, which is a quarterback who's like kind of a middle of the pack type dude who will just for like 3 to 5 games play like on fire, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and then we'll come back and lay an egg like randomly after that stretch and kind of regress to being mediocre again. So I tend to value those guys slightly higher. I get the consistency is massive at quarterback, but I don't have a problem with Cousins being outside the top 20, but I kind of find it hard to believe that you have some of the guys that you have ahead of him. Just in my opinion. Like, I think you have Joe Burrow way higher than I do. And like, I don't mean to hate on Joe Burrow, but I think that rookies are going to struggle this year in general. And I think like he had a fantastic year last year, but he was really a 1-year wonder. So I think he's going to take some time to develop at the next level. So, but yeah, you'll soon see where I have a Cousins coming in. And, but I can understand why you're lower on him for sure.
Let's just talk about Burrow, I guess. We'll see where I have him soon. I love Burrow as a player coming in. I understand what you're saying about rookies struggling this year because the pandemic and everything, like they can't practice as much. But I think Burrow has an advantage over the other rookie quarterbacks because the Bengals spent so much time with him ahead of the draft. And like they maximized their allotted meetings with him every single week. And like people are looking at that and they're like, what are they doing? Like, why are they meeting with him so much? It was because they're working on installing the offense with him like back in late February. Like that's how much they loved him. So he has kind of a jump start in that fashion. Like I know that it's not real on field in practice action, but I think it does help a little bit. And I think with his like great accuracy and mobility, I think that'll help him progress as a rookie. So I'm pretty high on Burrow. I like him a lot. So I guess we'll see what happens. So Garoppolo is someone you don't have, someone you have in your top 20. Actually, I'm kind of interested to hear where you have him. So I guess don't spoil it yet, but I don't understand this guy at all. Like he was 44th in the NFL top 100. And you have him higher than me. I feel like maybe I'm wrong about Garoppolo. Like everyone else is right about him. But I just don't see it with him. I think he holds the ball way too long. It takes him way too long to make decisions. He's come through in the clutch sometimes. Like I'll give him credit for that, and he looks great on occasion. But I think he's so inconsistent, and I just don't think he's there mentally.
Yeah, I'm going to say that we have Garoppolo ranked very, very, very close to each other. So I don't think you're going to be that surprised where he ended up for me. But in defense of Garoppolo, I really like his skill set. And I think this is kind of something that people forget about. We love to harp on, Patrick Mahomes has only been a starter for 2 years. Well, in his career, Jimmy Garoppolo has 26 regular season starts and 3 playoff starts. So he started a total of 29 games. He's still very much a developing product. Now, I don't think he deserves to be top 50 in the NFL. Ryan Tannehill has even less credence of being on that list. Just to get back to that list was terrible. I can't deal with how the players overvalue quarterbacks anymore. It bothers me. But Garoppolo hasn't turned 29 yet. I get your point. He holds the ball too long. And he has some times where he makes like bad decisions and throws interceptions. I think when we saw him at his best, those first 5 games with the 49ers, he wasn't thinking that much. He was just reacting. He was reading the field. When he saw someone open, he threw it. He didn't worry about that. And that was the best stretch he's had in his life. I think if he gets back to that, and further removed from an ACL tear, I think he'll be better off. And maybe more comfortable on that leg. I think he'll have a good chance to kind of reach his ceiling. I think his ceiling is kind of as a, maybe a top 15 quarterback. Like I don't think he'll ever be elite or anything. But if he can use his ability to read the field and just, get comfortable more than anything else, he's already taken a very talented team to the Super Bowl and won 2 rings as a backup. So I think that in the future, he could be a quality starter for a playoff team.
Yeah, I just can't get over how bad he was in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter. It just maybe that played into it. Why I have him outside the top 20. Before we move on to the top 20, I saw you at Bridgewater at 22, which was shocking to me because you love Bridgewater as a quarterback who covers the spread. So why Bridgewater so low?
There are 2 reasons for it. One, I don't think the Panthers are going to be great this year. They don't have a bad offense, and they added a lot of talent to defense, but I don't trust the coaching staff yet. And I think Bridgewater, that's kind of not the situation I would want him to be going into at this point with a staff with such little NFL experience. And the other thing is, I think Teddy Bridgewater is a rock solid quarterback in terms of being a game manager, but I think his ceiling, his ceiling is kind of low. He's a very high floor, low ceiling type player. So again, he's a guy who I could envision maybe he's a top 16 quarterback in the league. Maybe he's the 15th best, but I don't think he ever gets to that top 12 territory where it's he's leading a team to he could start on a playoff team, but I don't think he's the reason that they're getting to the playoffs. So I view him as more of a game manager. I love him for the purposes of betting. He always covers the spread, which is going to make Carolina maddening this year because I'm going to bet against them a lot, and then they're going to cover the spread all the time. I know myself well enough to know that. But, I think Teddy Bridgewater is a great guy also, and I think the resilience he's shown coming back from that knee injury is extremely valuable too. It just shows you that, he has high character and the football toughness needed from a quarterback. So there's a lot I like about him. I just don't think that he has a super high ceiling as a passer.
I agree. He doesn't have a high ceiling for sure. I've gotten yelled at by so many Viking fans who are like, how can you have Bridgewater over Cousins? And I'd rather have Bridgewater. I'm sorry. I totally agree that the ceiling isn't there. But I don't know. I just don't trust Cousins. All right, let's get to 20 through 17.
Okay, so 20 is where I had Jimmy Garoppolo, so 1 spot difference there. 19, I have Baker Mayfield. 18 is Daniel Jones. 17 is Josh Allen. So checking off the final 2 New York quarterbacks there at 17 and 18.
Okay, Josh Allen, and I'm running out of space in the scroller, so we'll see how that goes. All right, so break this down. So you have Yeah, Garoppolo, that makes sense to me. Daniel Jones. I think Josh Allen is someone people would have higher. So do you want to talk about why you have him in 17?
Yeah, so I liked what I saw out of Allen last year. You definitely saw a ton of growth. His mobility is certainly improving, and his arm strength. Like, I mean, he has a cannon of an arm. But for me, there's just still a few things that I want ironed out before I christen him a top 15 quarterback. I want him to be able to. One thing sticks out in my head, and that's the game against the Texans in the playoffs. I think that's really what's holding me back there. I feel like the Bills should have won that. And I feel like Josh Allen just couldn't quite get the job done. I want him to be able to show more of an ability to win in key situations. He was off to a great start with that last year. This is going to be a big year because expectations are high for the Bills. And the other thing is I just want his completion percentage to go over 60. He made a 6-point jump last year from his rookie year, so that's huge. But in essence, I think he's still a little bit raw. But I think this year is the year he's going to make the big leap. And, I could look by the end of this year, I could look stupid for having him at 17. And people may say oh, yeah, how did you not see him becoming a top 10 talent? So I think he could easily be higher than I have him, but I'm just kind of tempering expectations a little bit so I don't heap on too much to him, even though he probably doesn't care what I think.
Yeah, right. I would say he's the opposite of Bridgewater, right? Like he has such a high ceiling, but he's not quite there yet. But I think that with another year of experience, like when he entered the NFL, I was like, this guy's going to take in his third year. I think is really going to take off, and he kind of developed. I thought quicker than I thought last year. Like I know that he still made mistakes. He did not come through in the clutch, like you said, in that playoff game. But I didn't think the Bills would be there in the playoffs last year. I thought that Allen was still going to go through growing pains last year. I guess to a somewhat of an extent he did, but he did play better than I thought. And now you add Stephon Diggs to that offense. I think he could really make a big leap this year. Wouldn't surprise me if people see him as a top 10 quarterback after the season. I just think he just has amazing upside. So that's why I have Josh Allen higher. My 20 through 17 is 20 Baker Mayfield, so kind of the same. 19 Dak Prescott, which is going to anger a lot of people. 18 Teddy Bridgewater, so a little bit higher than you, and then 17 Daniel Jones, so one spot apart. So Prescott, let's get to Dak Prescott. I'm kind of curious to hear where you have him, so you can talk about that later. But I think that whenever this guy has like he's had such a great supporting cast his entire career. Like Dallas's offensive line has been ranked near the top unless they've had injuries, near the top. He's had Ezekiel Elliott. He's had Amari Cooper. He's had Michael Gallup. Like Jason Witten came back. Just a great supporting cast the whole time. Whenever Dallas has missed players, whether it's Cooper or a couple of offensive linemen, that offense just does not look good. And Dak Prescott just doesn't. He just really regresses. And I think that it's kind of like if you put most quarterbacks in that situation, like if you put like Kirk Cousins in that offense, I think he could post similar numbers. If you put Jared Goff in that offense, actually, we've seen him post those numbers with the Rams back when they had a good offensive line. I think Prescott is, the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's terrible. I have him 19, so I think he's a slightly below average quarterback. But I do think he's overrated. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about him.
Yeah, I definitely think he's overrated. I have him a little bit higher than you, but it's not like a massive difference here. I still think he's top. I think he's slightly above average guy, so that kind of spoils a little bit where he'll land for me. But yeah, the points you make are totally right. We've seen him without offensive linemen getting sacked 6 times in a game by Adrian Claiborne, and he's had all these great receivers catching passes from him. So I think if you took him and put him on a team with less talent, you'd have to wonder just how good he would end up being. And I think the answer is maybe a little bit above average. Maybe he would have learned to play without talent around him a little bit better. I do think that has to play a part in it. Also, he has been victim of awful coaching under Jason Garrett at times during his career. So, that staff developed him, but they also didn't do him any favors in terms of coaching him in certain areas. So I think that's hurt him, but I don't have a problem with him falling, just inside the top 20. I know a lot of other people will be like, oh, he's a top 10 quarterback. Oh, he's elite. Oh, he's better than Carson Wentz. But no, none of that is true. I don't think that's the case. I do say having Daniel Jones above him at this point, I think, is premature. I love Daniel Jones as much as the next guy, but we haven't seen what Jones is going to do in his second year. But again, you're projecting what they're going to do this year, and Prescott could regress a bit, and we both expect Jones to make a big leap. So I'm kind of nitpicking you there, and also like backing off on what I'm saying. So this is a terrible argument I'm making.
It's funny. I think if you put Daniel Jones in Dallas's offense and you put Dak Prescott on the Giants now that they don't have Nate Solder, I do think the Giants have a lot of talent, so maybe I shouldn't say that. Like, I think that Daniel Jones will have a very good second season in that offense. And unfortunately, Solder's out. But if you like you said, if you put Prescott on a bad offensive team, I think he really struggles. Whereas, like, we saw Daniel Jones last year play on a team that had kind of a pedestrian offensive line. Saquon Barkley was not himself for most of the year. He had his top receiver, Darius Slayton, was a rookie. He was missing a lot of receivers for most of the year, like Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate. They were in and out of the lineup. Evan Ingram barely played. And Daniel Jones still had some nice moments. Like he did have some stinkers for sure, but he was a rookie, and I think he's going to be a lot better. So I think if you put Daniel Jones with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup and Ezekiel Elliott and that offensive line, like I would think he would have a monster second year. In fact, I would say Dallas would have a good chance to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you make a compelling argument. And again, like I said, I was already backing off on my argument in my head, and now I'm like fully convinced that Daniel Jones, I think, ceiling for sure is higher than Prescott. The one thing that concerns me and why I ranked him lower than Prescott right now, one thing Prescott is good at is he doesn't turn the ball over very often. He takes a lot of sacks, but he just doesn't turn it over. Jones turned it over a lot last year, but like our good friend, the Fantasy Football Show, says here, Danny Dimes is going to flirt with top 6 to 7 QB numbers this year. I completely agree with that. He's a guy I'm targeting all day, every day in fantasy. And I have a bet on him to win MVP too. So I guess I'm a huge Daniel Jones fan. So I don't even know why I asked you why you had him in front of Dak Prescott. Like, there's no reason I needed to do that.
I have, as I've said before, the Giants at 140-1 to win the Super Bowl. I believe they're still there at Bookmaker, as they were there a couple weeks ago. So I don't know if that's changed. And yeah, I agree with the Fantasy Football Show. Follow him, by the way, on YouTube. He produces some great content. I don't know if there's anything else to discuss in the 17 to 20 range. Like, we both had Mayfield. We both had Jones over Mayfield, which I thought was funny. Like, Mayfield would, I feel like last year if we did this, it would have been a lot higher. Do you have any confidence that Mayfield could turn his career around?
I do. I think he should be better with better protection on the edges. But I think his rookie year, he got helped a lot by Ken Zampese, the quarterback's coach, who's now in Washington, which is another reason I think Dwayne Haskins will improve this year. I think losing him hurt Mayfield last year, and just having pressure off the edges, I think rattled him. But with Jack Conklin there right now? I think they signed him and drafted Jedrick Wills. So I think that that should help him be much better because they already have a bunch of good offensive weapons. So, but still, I'm not going to put him as above average just yet because last year he looked like he was playing scared.
Yeah, we had a question if this is Darnold's last chance to prove himself. I think he has 2 years. Unless he's absolutely atrocious this year. Like, Trubisky's still in Chicago and he has a chance to win the starting job. So like, Darnold's going to have 2 more years. He's cheap. He's on a cheap contract. So they have no reason to get rid of him. All right. Let's get to 16 through 13.
Okay. So 16 is where I have Kirk Cousins. I'm putting him dead in the middle. That's what I love to do. I love to put guys that I think are average right in the middle. Dak Prescott comes in at 15. Kyler Murray will check in at 14 for me. And Cam Newton makes the cut at 13. So we got a couple mobile guys and a couple guys we've already talked about.
Awesome. Okay, my 16 through 13. So I have 16, Daniel Jones. Actually, no, that was Joe Burrow was 17. Joe Burrow was 17 for me. Daniel Jones is 16, so I made a mistake there. 15, Matthew Stafford. 14, Cam Newton, and 13, Ben Roethlisberger. So what's the first thing you want to touch on here?
Yeah, I think both of us have Cam Newton properly ranked. I think let's start there because, people get hung up on like, oh, Cam Newton hasn't been healthy in 2 years. Oh, he's never going to regain that same form. But it's really been a year and a half that he's missed action with the shoulder and foot injury issues. But during that 2018 season, he was having one of his best years to date. He was throwing the ball accurately. And he was really leading the Panthers to a solid season, nothing spectacular, but solid. I think in New England with Josh McDaniels, if he can stay healthy, he could maybe not regain MVP form, but go back to that, really above average starter level and scrambling ability that, was once tantalizing to people, but people just seem to forget how good he is just because he missed most of last season and the Panthers were terrible. So I think Newton is being underrated in most circles, but at this point in time, he's like right on the fringe of being a top 12 quarterback for me.
Yeah, same for me. He's 14. I agree with everything you said. I'm curious to see how he does this year. I hope he can stay healthy because he's great. He's fun to watch when he is. So like I said, Daniel Jones 16, Burrow 17. I don't know if you want to touch on Burrow a little bit more, but yeah, I think this is probably a little bit too high, in all honesty. But then I think about it, and then I'm like, I'd rather have Burrow this year than Bridgewater. I'd rather have Burrow than Prescott. I'd rather have Burrow than Mayfield. I'd rather have Burrow than Garoppolo and Cousins and Goff. And that's how I came to have Burrow at 17. I'm just very high on him. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens with him, but I'm pretty high on him because of his, like I said, his accuracy and mobility. So I had Stafford 15. I would have Stafford a lot higher than this if I was confident in his back. That's so scary to me because I could see a scenario where he just pulls an Andrew Locke and retires just because his back is bad. And also his wife is a cancer survivor. So, he may not opt to play this year. I feel like of all the starting quarterbacks, I think he's most likely to opt out. So I think that's why I have Stafford, so low. If Stafford were healthy right now, he would definitely be in the top 10 for me.
Yeah, and Stafford is much higher for me just because I'm projecting as if he will be healthy. I'm doing the same with Ben Roethlisberger. Either of those things could change if, reports come out of camp that, Big Ben is not throwing the ball well, or, Stafford's not moving well, or he might opt out. Something like that happens, then I probably would move them down. But I can totally see Stafford at 15. I think over the course of the past decade, he's been one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. People just kind of, for a while, just forgot about him because the Lions were so bad outside of him and Calvin Johnson. But he put up great statistical numbers. He led the Lions to the playoffs on occasion. So I think he's just a rock solid starter. And he's a good team leader too. I'll always remember one play from his rookie season. They were playing the Browns in a game of 1-10 versus 1-10 teams. And it was 37-30, I think. And then Stafford and the Lions threw a touchdown. He broke his collarbone on the play. And then he came back in the game to throw the 2-point conversion. And that was the moment that I knew, all right, Matthew Stafford is one tough dude. So I have confidence that he'll be able to make it back from this back injury. I know you have way more experience with having, back issues and stuff. But I think Stafford will be able to push through and have a good season. So I have him slightly higher than you, but the concerns that you have are totally warranted.
I'm pretty concerned about that. And thanks to Duke for asking that question and the great feedback there. I'm listing these quarterbacks with some concerns, some trepidation. Ben Roethlisberger, we don't know if he's going to be healthy. Today, I believe he said that his elbow felt good, but he's kind of on a pitch count right now, so he may not be 100%. He's always had trouble with injuries anyway, so we don't know if he's going to stay healthy. Same thing with Stafford. I love that. I love that game, by the way. I remember that. But it's one of many occasions in which Stafford's been injured. So I think that, these quarterbacks definitely have their downsides, but they could definitely be in the top 10 when we discuss this next year. Kyler Murray is the last of the quarterbacks we haven't discussed in this range. You have him 14. I have him a little bit higher. And I guess we're both bullish on him because we have him in the top half. I love his upside. I think he's going to be a lot better this year, especially with Hopkins. And then, they added Beachum, unfortunately, today with Marcus Gilbert opting out. But I think if the protection holds up, I think he could be very good this year, especially with his new receiving core.
Yeah, I agree. I think the talent surrounding him is fantastic. And Murray's skill into that of Russell Wilson I'll admit, I was late on the Murray bandwagon during the NFL draft. So I was like, I just don't see it with him. But then, he became the number one overall pick favorite, and I went back and watched it. I'm like, okay, I do see it. I do see the Russell Wilson with him. So I'm a massive fan of Russell Wilson, as are you. I know that for a fact. I think that Kyler will make the leap. I think having Hopkins at his disposal is huge. And I just think he fits the offense that Kingsbury wants to run very well. So I think he's going to have a really great season. I didn't want to rank him any higher than 14. I felt like putting him higher than that would be kind of premature. But he did have a great season last year and was Rookie of the Year, I believe. So I think the ultimate guy who's going to be better than the average quarterbacks this year and may ultimately leap into the top 10. But even if he doesn't, I don't see him being anything worse than a top 15 guy. So that's why I have him at 14, but I could totally understand people being higher on him. And conversely, I could understand why people might be lower on him if they thought last year was a bit of a fluke and that he may endure a sophomore slump.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, though, that if I wasn't concerned about Stafford's health, and Ben's health, Murray would probably be in this range for me. All right, let's get to 12 through 9.
Okay, so 12, I have Phillip Rivers. Then I have Ben Roethlisberger at 11. Matthew Stafford comes in at number 10 for me. And Matt Ryan comes in at number 9. So I go back-to-back Matts there in the top 10. And just to touch on Stafford, since we already talked about him, he's just put up such great numbers. He's been very consistent. And even though he's had some injury problems over the years, he's also had a lot of seasons where he's just played the full 16 games, even while dealing with injuries, and has still done enough to lead, what has mostly been at best decent Lions teams to kind of being at least within the wild card hunt. So I have a lot of respect for him. So I felt like putting him in the top 10 on my list. He was deserving, even if there are some questions about him this year. And, maybe I'll eat my words on that, but I still think he's a top 10 quarterback at this point in time.
I hope he is. That would mean that his back is healthy and he could have a great year. It's such a shame that he's been with the Lions for this long. If he was with a good organization, I feel like he would have gotten to the playoffs a lot. So it's just a shame. Like I said before, I'm concerned about his health. My 12 through 9 is 12 Phillip Rivers, so we agree on that. 11 Kyler Murray, so 3 spots ahead of you there. 10 Josh Allen, and that's our biggest disagreement. And then 9 Matt Ryan. So we have 2 guys similarly in the 12 through 9 range. But yeah, Josh Allen, like I talked about, touched on briefly. I feel like with his upside, and I said before, I thought he was a 3-year project coming in. I think this is going to be the year he makes a big leap. Could be wrong. He is a low floor for sure. But I think his ceiling is just through the roof, and I think he's going to have a great year. But I thought it was funny that we both rank Rivers and Ryan 12 and 9 respectively.
It's funny, too, because Rivers at 12 was somehow the second easiest quarterback to rank on this list, outside of number 1, which we'll get to eventually. I'm sure there's no suspense for that on anyone's part who's watching. But, yeah, I think for me, Rivers, it's people harp on, the interceptions. He was bad last year. But in reality, it's he's been playing with a terrible offensive line his whole career and is going to a team with the best offensive line in the league. And similarly solid weapons to what he had in Los Angeles / San Diego. So I think having him there makes a lot of sense. And, Matt Ryan is another guy who's kind of flown under the radar, in my opinion. Not always, but, he had that one MVP year, got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. But he's been a very good quarterback for that team, and he's had good weapons around him. But again, he's another quarterback whose offensive line play hasn't always been good, and he's still managed to make his team competitive. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. I still can't believe he's 35 now. That's mind blowing to me, because I remember watching him when he was at Boston College, because I'm a big BC fan. Now he's 35 and still in the league with the Falcons and still doing well.
Yeah, I remember Mike Mayock yelling about him coming from Boston College. It felt like it was yesterday, and now he's 35. It's kind of nuts. I don't think I talked about it on this podcast or the mock drafts that we do. But I came to the realization in Las Vegas when I was there a couple weeks ago that I like Atlanta to win the Super Bowl at 80-1 odds. Now, if they were 30-1, I wouldn't bet them, but I think 80-1, I feel like they're a great long shot, because if you think about it, They finished 6-2 to close out the year last year. They drafted 2 offensive linemen in the first round. One of them, Chris Lindstrom, barely played last year because of injury. So they're going to have him. It's basically another draft pick that they're getting on the offensive line. Obviously, they have great offensive threats like Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Todd Gurley. They got Hayden Hurst, who was a former first-round pick, so I think he could do well in that offense. Obviously, they have Matt Ryan, and their defense added Dante Fowler, to the pass rush. I know their secondary is a big question mark. The corners might be terrible this year, but if they start the year well, they could trade for a corner. And I like their defensive backs coach, who improved things in the second half of the year. Quick thoughts on that? Like, am I crazy in liking Atlanta 80-1?
I got burned last year by Atlanta, as you know, and it was well publicized on this podcast. I picked Atlanta to win the Super Bowl, and then they started the year 1-7, and I felt like an absolute fool. But I could see the argument for it. Their offense is certainly talented enough, and defense, their front seven is solid. I don't think it's great, but they've added some nice pieces to it. I think Grady Jarrett constantly goes under the radar. Dante Fowler's coming off a good year, and I really like Deion Jones. I think he's a great linebacker. Secondary, massive concern. AJ Terrell would have to come in and be really a true number one cornerback, I think, for them in order for them to find success. But that said, I think they did just sign Darqueze Dennard to play the slot. I really like that move. He's a solid player, and he really should have been picked up before now. I think he was, and his deal got voided by a failed physical or something like that. But we'll see what they ultimately do. I would love to see them add another veteran corner if they think they're truly going to compete. I know Logan Ryan is still out there. I think he would be a really good fit there. He was super productive in Tennessee last year, though he did get burned. So anyway, I could see Atlanta at 80-1. I love the offense enough that I'd consider betting it, but the defense gives me just enough pause that with my history of betting them last year, I won't do it, but I will root for them since you have done it.
Well, thank you. I will say, though, our super contest proxy, Andy, who is I've worked with him for about a decade now, kind of crazy how time flies. He loves Atlanta 80-1, and he's a professional bettor. So so I after talking to him, he kind of convinced me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bet this team. So hopefully the $50 to win 4,000 thing comes through. That'd be nice. All right, 8-5. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is where we're going to probably have a lot of overlap from here on out. So I have Carson Wentz at 8, Drew Brees at 7, Lamar Jackson at 6, and Aaron Rodgers checks in at number 5 for me.
Okay, Rodgers at 5. So when you said before that everyone would know who our number 1 is, I was kind of thinking, do they? Because the NFL Top 100 had Lamar Jackson as the number 1 player. So do you want to talk about where you have him why you have him number 6 as I enter my 8 through 5?
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson had a fantastic year last year. He was MVP, well-deserving, really led that Baltimore team to new heights. And the big thing with him was he improved his passing ability massively. He was an excellent runner as a rookie, but I don't want to call him suspect, but kind of middle of the road passer at that time. But in the offseason, he improved greatly and was much better throwing the ball, and that allowed him to open things up for him to run more. So, I could see him being anywhere as high as a top 3 quarterback on people's list. I just haven't at this juncture because I still think he needs to improve his passing a little bit, just his accuracy, his downfield ability, and his ability to read the field. But he was spectacular last year. I just think also there's been some losses on offense. I think seeing how he does without Marshall Yanda blocking for him is going to be big. Because one of the big things, the reason that he had so much success running is because the offensive line blocked well, gave him time to read the field, and he was able to scramble. So I have him a little bit lower just because I'm kind of factoring in a tiny bit of regression after last year. But I don't think there's any doubt that he's a top 6 quarterback. And again, you can convince me he's a top 3 quarterback.
Okay, well, I guess I have some doubt because I have Lamar Jackson at 7. Okay. Pretty close. I have Wentz at 8 like you do, Jackson at 7, Drew Brees at 6, and Deshaun Watson at 5. So we flip-flopped Jackson and Brees. So with Lamar Jackson, to me, he's not there as a passer yet. I rewatched the 2019 season. He's phenomenal at times. He really is. And his rushing ability is through the roof, obviously. And That's something that's not going to last forever. Like we saw it with Robert Griffin, we saw it with Vince Young. Like they came into the league, they ran all over defenses, and then they eventually had to stop running because they had injuries. And like we've seen Jackson say this offseason that he wants to throw more, and like that would worry me as if I were a Ravens fan, like because like Jackson's best attribute. It's his legs, like obviously. So if he's throwing more and not running as much, the Ravens aren't going to be as successful. I think you brought up a great point about Marshall Yanda. His protection is not going to be as great. Like Jackson was phenomenal last year, but one of the reasons for that was the offensive line. Like I feel like the Ravens had the best offensive line in the NFL. That may not be the case anymore without Yanda. So so those are all concerns. Having said that, like Jackson works super hard. Like he's one of the hardest workers in the NFL, and I think he will improve as a passer, and I think he will get better. I just don't know if he's going to get there this year. But then again, I have him number 7, so I definitely like him a lot. Deshaun, I want to say Deshaun Watson for a little bit later, and I guess you have Aaron Rodgers 5, so I guess we can talk about it now. Like I couldn't decide whether I liked Aaron Rodgers more than Deshaun Watson. Like it was so close to me.
Yeah, no, I had trouble with Aaron Rodgers versus Deshaun Watson because I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a great year because I think the team pissed him off by drafting Jordan Love. I think that's one reason I was considering Rodgers before the likes of Watson and Tom Brady. But the reality of the situation is I think that Rodgers has a worse supporting cast. He's also older and has battled injuries. I still think he's an elite quarterback by every definition of the word. But I just think like where Deshaun Watson is younger and, just has unbelievable escapability. Like the thing that I hearken back to when I think about how good Deshaun Watson is against the Raiders last year. He was like going to be dragged down by his helmet, spun out of it. And I think he almost, if not did, throw a touchdown pass that like won the Texans the game. And, the fact that he's been able to overcome Bill O'Brien's coaching is just that's really what put him above for Aaron Rodgers for me because, Mike McCarthy at the end of his tenure kind of fell apart. Things fell apart there. But I think Rodgers has had better coaching in general throughout his career than Deshaun Watson has had for sure.
Well, I was about to say, like, Watson has overcome Bill O'Brien, but Rodgers overcame Mike McCarthy. So they both have had some terrible coaching, and you'd wonder how many Super Bowls Rodgers would have won had he had good coaching. It was super close for me. I think the one thing I will say, though, is that Deshaun Watson has always had DeAndre Hopkins. So we're going to see Deshaun Watson without DeAndre Hopkins for the first time. That said, he's still my number 5 quarterback. So I love Watson. I think he's a great quarterback. I could be wrong about him with Rodgers. I just think that, if you point a gun to my head and you're like, which quarterback do you think do you want to win this game? I think I would choose Rodgers over Watson, but it was super close.
That's like we got to get Family Feud style survey. Like do that. Like we surveyed 100 people. You need one quarterback to win this game. See what people answer because I think I might pick Deshaun Watson, but you could really convince me either way.
Yeah, like I said, it's super close. It would be fun. It would be fun to do that. Just ask like legitimate football fans what they think. That'd be cool. All right, 4 through 1.
Okay, so I had Tom Brady coming in at 4, then Deshaun Watson at 3, Russell Wilson at 2, and no surprises at the top. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the league, not the 4th best player in the league, NFL top 100. Please don't do that again. We all know it's going to be Mahomes for a long time. So those are my top 4. And the reason that I have Deshaun Watson again above Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, those guys, is just I think he just extends plays with his legs, and I don't think that Brady or Rodgers at this stage in their career, well, Brady's never been able to do it really. He just climbs the pocket better than anyone I've ever seen. But Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that same mobility because of that knee injury he suffered at the beginning of the 2018 season. So Watson gets the nod above that for me at this point. So, that's why I have him at number 3. And I think if you surveyed all NFL fans, I think that on average, Mahomes and Wilson would be the top 2 quarterbacks in the league.
You would think so. So I think Hot Dog City is confused about where we have Daniel Jones, so I assume he's tuning in late. You had Jones at 18. I had him at 16, I believe. I mean, I love Daniel Jones. I think he's gonna have a great year, but he's not in the top 3. I know he's probably just kidding. Yeah, so Mahomes is the best player in the NFL. I look forward to talking about the NFL Top 100. I didn't do that. I didn't plan for it this week because I know that Kenny has a lot to say about it too. So I thought we could have like a 3-man podcast talking about the NFL Top 100. Kenny's very mad about it. By the way, Kenny is on his honeymoon right now. So congrats to him. So I'll say that, and then I'll get to my top 4. Number 4, Aaron Rodgers. Number 3, Tom Brady. Number 2, Russell Wilson, and number 1, of course, Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, I have Brady one spot higher than you do. You know, I could see you being right about like him like lower than Watson. But I think we're in the same vicinity. Like he is 43, so like there's always a possibility that he drops off this year and struggles. Kind of like Peyton Manning was great in 2014, and then 2015 he was just shot. Like he was done. Like so that could happen to Brady. I just wouldn't bet against the greatest player of all time, who is very determined this offseason to prove that he can win without Bill Belichick. Like I think Brady's going to have one more great year, and then maybe he falls off at 44. I love the Bucs this year.
Yeah, no, I love the Bucs this year too, but I had to downgrade him for the betrayal of the New England fans. Yeah, no, but in reality, the reason that I have him one spot lower than Watson again is just because Brady doesn't have mobility. He climbs the pocket well, but I think that Watson's mobility is just a little bit more of a game changer that I would like among my top quarterbacks. Watson has the mix of excellent passing ability and mobility, but you know, of the quarterbacks on this list, like, you know, Brady's passing ability to stay on the field, and just, you know, his track record of immense success, like I'm never going to doubt him. When he'll be done when I see that he's officially done. Like once he retires, that's when I'm declaring him done. But until then, I will believe him every step of the way, because I remember, I think it was 2009, the Patriots lost to the Ravens in the opening wild card game, and I was watching with my uncle, and he just turned to me and my dad, and he goes, "Brady's done. He just doesn't look good. He doesn't have it anymore." Lo and behold, 10 years and 3 Super Bowl titles later, I think he still does have it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think everyone's been in the Brady's done camp at some point. For me, it was like the 2014 preseason. He looked terrible. Like it looked like his arm strength was shot. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe I guess he was just nursing an injury that was never reported. Because he was floating passes downfield. He looked like Brady Quinn on some occasions. Like I even wrote that on the site. Like he was bad. And then lo and behold, he won the Super Bowl that year. So clearly was wrong about that. But I do think he was injured, and then he kind of improved because he got better and better each week. I remember that during that season. And then he was obviously great in the Super Bowl. So yeah, Russell Wilson too, you know, I don't think that's going to surprise anyone. And then obviously Mahomes should be the top player in the NFL. Let me ask you about Mahomes, because I saw this prop at the Westgate when I was signing up for the Super Contest. They had this cool prop of Mahomes. It says from 2020 through 2032, over on their Chiefs Super Bowls 1.5.
Ooh. I think over. I would go over pretty easily. I think every year they're going to be in contention with Mahomes, barring some massive injury.
I agree. And I was talking to Andy, our proxy, and I was like, yeah, that seems like a good bet. Like I feel like Mahomes, I feel like it will go over. Like I think he's going to be the best quarterback in the NFL this whole decade. And then Andy was like, well, do you really want to tie your money for 10 years? I'm like, okay, I guess I won't bet this. Kind of dumb to do that. But yeah, I would definitely go over 1.5. I think Mahomes at the end of his career, you know, if he wins fewer than 4 Super Bowls, I'd be like shocked. Like I think he's going to 4 or more. Like he's that great. Like I don't know. I just like maybe barring injury, like of course like injuries could happen and everything, but I think if he stays healthy and, you know, if the Chiefs suddenly aren't run by a buffoon, like, you know, let's just say Andy Reid retires and Bill O'Brien gets hired there. Like, okay, maybe I changed my prediction, but I think I would go over.
Yeah, if Bill O'Brien ends up coaching Patrick Mahomes at any point in his career, that would be one of probably the most interesting things to watch, because you'll watch someone with just the most natural arm talent in the world with one of the most unnatural coaches in the NFL, just in terms of getting the most out of his players and, preparing game plans and, everything that you could ask for from a coach. But yeah, I would say over 1.5 Super Bowls. I would not be surprised to see him win 4 total, so 3 more. Or maybe even more if they can continue to draft and develop talent like they've done in recent years. I think they'll be in great shape. I hope Andy Reid stays there a long time, or at least until he retires, because I think he's just such a great coach for Mahomes, and he's a good talent evaluator and just a great guy. So I'm a big Andy Reid fan. So hopefully he gets to reap as much of Patrick Mahomes' success as possible.
Do you know how old Andy Reid is?
I want to say he's 63.
Oh, you're so close. He's 62. I actually looked it up right now. Yeah, I think it's possible that he's there this entire decade. He's obviously, he'll be 72 by the time the decade's over, which is, pretty old, but for an NFL head coach. But Andy Reid strikes me as someone who just does football and nothing else. He's kind of like Bill Belichick in that sense. Like football is his entire life. And I feel like if he retires, he'll be so bored that he'll want to coach again. And I think he might realize that. He's been a head coach every single year since 1999. It's almost Bill Belichick. Belichick's what, 2000? They're so close to each other. And I think they are the two best coaches in the NFL. So I think that, it'll be sad when they both go. I think they'll both go around the same time. But yeah, I think I would say for the most part, if not all this decade, he'll be there. So yeah, I would go over, but yeah, it's a good point by Andy. Don't tie your money up for 10 years. It's kind of dumb. All right. I guess that's about it. And as if you're watching this video, you see it's got super dark here. I don't know what happened. But yeah, I guess that's it. Anything else or anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I'll be tweeting about tons of fantasy stuff in the coming weeks, fantasy football, that is. I'll try to remember to tweet out my golf picks, and I may start tweeting out pitchers to use for MLB DFS, so long as that keeps going, because I've had some good success with the model I'm using, so I'll try to do that. And, if you have any sports questions, just feel free to tweet at me. I'm always down to talk. Follow me there.
All right, sounds good. I'm at waltzerfootball.com. Lots of fantasy football rankings and updates in the coming weeks. With training camp about to be on their way, we're going to have updates all the time. Disaster grades for opt-outs, updated 2021 NFL mock drafts from both Charlie and myself. And we have our NFL top 100 breakdown, but I look forward to talking to you and Kenny about it. Hopefully next week. I don't know when Kenny gets back exactly, but it will be either next week or the week after. That's about it. And I will talk to you later.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
Bye-bye.